Hello everybody. Welcome to our second 2021 South Devon Youth Jazz Masterclass from another socially distanced Willand 2 location, COVID secure, and I'm really pleased to see you all here. I hope you can hear us. Please use the comments box to tell us if you can't hear what's going on or if you need to tell us anything. We've got Lewis behind the camera who is ready and waiting to give us your comments. Please comment and engage with us as much as possible because that's all we can get really from you. We are broadcasting to you, but it's your conduit to us. So please do comment with anything that you'd like to tell us. Without much further ado, I'd like to introduce Ed Leaker, who is head of Woodwind and Jazz at Wells Cathedral School. He's going to be running our masterclass today. We've got a couple of tunes lined up for you, and I'll introduce the rest of the band later on, just to say thank you at the end. But without further ado, I'll hand over to Ed Leaker.
Hello, welcome. Thank you for having me. It's really fantastic to be here. Thank you. I'll say thank you now for inviting me to be here because I always forget at the end. So thank you so much, Devon Youth Workshops, for having me here. This is really exciting. We're deep in the jazz bunker. We've all made it out of our homes, and here we are. And the first thing I'm going to do with you all, you've all got some sheets that I've sent through, which hopefully, through Sam, which we'll be using a bit later on. But to start with, I'm going to do something that I always do in my practice. It's something that was shown to me by an old player years ago, and something that I really quite like. So I hope you've all got instruments ready and on the go. And what we're going to do, I'm going to just play quite freely. I do like to do this at the beginning of my practice because it's the time when none of the scales and the pieces that I'm working on and those tunes in the real book or whatever else is getting in the way of my playing I'm having to work on, all of that stuff hasn't entered my head yet. I'm completely and utterly just open and free. It's the most creative time. Sometimes I actually record myself doing this, which is quite exciting because I can listen to it back. And sometimes I listen to it back and it's absolute rubbish, and that's fine. And sometimes I listen to it back and I think, wow, there's a tiny gem. There is gold in there. And I'll start writing it down and trying to make a tune out of it and using it in that way. But most of the time it's just a way of warming up, maybe working on phrasing, maybe if we play an instrument that we can use vibrato, we could use a bit of that, and leaving lots of space in the music. So I'm just going to show you what I normally do. I'm going to play maybe for about 10 seconds, but after that I'm going to continue and I'm going to ask all these wonderful people to join in. Hopefully we'll complement what we're all playing together. And do feel free just to warm your instrument up and play along with us. If a note sounds like it fits with us, brilliant. If it sounds like it doesn't fit with us, even better, because then you're learning about soundscapes and how different sounds fit together. So there's no time at all, there's no pulse, we're just going to play freely. So I'll just start us off, and I'll try and sort of give you a little signal in a second. That was really nice. And I can't tell you how much I just enjoyed playing with people, even just playing and we didn't know what was going to happen. That was so nice. I do this in my room at home, and it's fun, but it's nothing like as much fun as it was then. So thank you all for that. That's brilliant. I hope everyone just joined in a little bit, played some notes. I know it feels strange because probably your teachers tell you you should play certain types of things and you should practice scales first and long notes. They are right. You should do all of that stuff. But just try sometimes just doing one or two little things like this. And on that note, I'm going to say, hopefully, one of the things I like to say in workshops that I give is to say, if you can leave this with maybe just one thing that you can take away, because we'll say millions of things, I'm sure the others will join in soon, and we'll say all sorts of things. If you can just take away one thing that you actually use or think about in your playing or think about in your practice, then I will feel like I've actually done some good work here. So hopefully, maybe you could always write to us later and tell us what that one thing is. Or not. I don't mind. That's okay. So we're going to move on and we're going to play this tune of mine, which is called Sesame Strut. I'm going to talk you through it very, very briefly. So if anybody's not sure what's going on, just put a note in the comments and we'll figure out what's happening for you so that you know what's happening. So you should be able to find the relevant part for your instrument. So Sesame Strut is a blues that I wrote. Any of you who are old enough to remember something called Sesame Street? Sesame Street still exist? I don't. Yeah, I think it does. So it's sort of loosely based on a noodling around that I was doing once, and then I started to use this in other workshops, and it seemed to work quite well. So obviously calling it Sesame Strut, the sort of feeling of strutting around. It's about having confidence. It's about playing with a big old sound, making this huge groove out of the music, which is hopefully what we're going to do. It's a blues, so it's not too difficult, and my idea is that we're going to focus mainly today on playing rhythmically. It's the most important thing for me. I listen to people all the time. My favourite players in jazz, they sound incredible, and I then try and figure out what they're doing, and I find the notes are really, really quite simple, but actually they're playing with this incredible sense of rhythm, and along with that, often they're playing with really good articulation to help them with the rhythm and help them with the style. So we'll talk a little bit more about that after we've played, but let's have a play of this tune. So if you have a quick look, what happens is we've got 8 bars at the beginning of introduction, 8 bars of introduction where the rhythm section play, and then we come in with the head, and we play the head twice. Hopefully you all know the head is the tune of a jazz arrangement. This is not quite just a lead sheet. This has got a little arrangement to it as well. So after we've played the head twice, we go into an ensemble section where the feel changes. So we go from a really swinging, kind of groovy shuffle to a more like hip-hop kind of funky feel. So it's got something a bit more modern about it as well. And then it goes back to shuffling again. And after the ensemble section, there is a solo section. And the solo section, you'll see on a separate sheet, I've given you the blues chords, which we're going to work on a little bit later on. But if you just want to use the blues scale, which again you'll see written out, there is the minor pentatonic scale and the blues scale. What I'd quite like to do is, just so that you all know what you're doing for improvising, I'd like to just try those scales out actually. So you should find that you've got the concert B-flat minor pentatonic scale and then the concert B-flat blues scale written out after it. So that'll be G if you're on an alto saxophone, and it'll be C if you're playing a clarinet or a trumpet or a tenor saxophone. Who am I missing out? Or B flat if you're playing a concert pitch instrument. So it should sound something like this. Try and play it with me if you can. This is the minor pentatonic scale. Okay, 3 and... So simple in many ways, but so complicated in others. This is something that I find sometimes I'm teaching some of my pupils who understand quite advanced jazz theory and harmony, and I say, oh, that bit's just a pentatonic. And they say, what? What's that? So actually, another thing that's going to be about today is taking you to the basics and the core things, the foundations, the building blocks. So it's never a bad thing to practice these things. Let's play the blues scale now that's next to it. So 3 and... such a great sound. And thank you for helping me out, Sam. So we can do all sorts of things with this. I like to practice these in some kind of pattern or other. So actually, as well as just practicing the scales, don't forget you can do other things with them. You often hear people playing things like those kind of things. It's really useful to play those kind of things just to get them right across the whole range of your instrument, whichever instrument you're playing, and to really get them under your fingers. So you can use that to improvise. I'll direct the solos. What we'll do is I'll take a solo first of all, and then I'm going to direct a solo to somewhere else in the band. I haven't decided yet. That's the fun of jazz. I just haven't decided. So keep them all on their toes. That's the fun bit. And then I'm going to point over here, and this is for you folk to have a go at playing. If you want to join in when we are soloing, that's also cool, because we can't hear you from here, so just enjoy it. I love doing this. When I listen to a Miles Davis tune, John Coltrane, Cannonball Adderley, just stick it on and play along over their solo, because you can pick up bits, and you've got such a great band playing along. So make sure you're playing, whatever happens. Turn it up nice and loud, headphones on, speakers up. This is Sesame Strut. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3,
Now it's your solo.
Fantastic, absolutely fantastic. We can just imagine the rapturous applause for these fantastic solos that we just heard. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Thank you. I hope everyone managed to get a solo in there at some point. I really do. That's really, really key and really important to what we're doing, and important for you to be able to learn something, to be able to play along with a band. I mean, how cool is that? Sorry, I'll stop going on about it. So what I really want to do is talk about groove. When we play something like this, it's got a shuffle feel, which is a real heavy swinging feel for most of this tune, and that feels really nice to play over. It means we can really push our swing quavers. And I know a lot of people want to talk about note choices, and I kind of do as well, but actually I'd rather talk about rhythm. So what I'm going to do is we're going to start the band going again, and I'm going to play some phrases that I want you to play after me. And if you can't do that, well, I'm going to start very easily, very simply, I should say. So if you should be able to make the first few. I'm going to start on the key note. So a G on the alto, C on the tenor and trumpet, clarinet, and a B flat on a concert piano. Get the phrases. Don't worry, you could just play a response and improvise something. And remember, because you're at home, it's actually even better just to try things out. If you were in front of a class of people, that's really important to try it that way. But actually, in this way, you can probably be more experimental. And then we're going to try and get Sam to do something exciting in a minute. He doesn't know this yet. Right, so evil laugh. So we're just going to play straight into the solo section. I'm going to play a phrase. I want you to play it back to me. And we'll take it around a few times. I'm not sure what I'm going to do yet, but I know what I'm aiming at. It's all about groove. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Check at this point. If everyone was here, I'd be saying, oh, I wonder how this is going. I'd be checking out how people were doing. I'm hoping everyone's doing okay. And if you haven't figured it out, I'm using basically the minor pentatonic scale that you've got written out at the bottom of that solo sheet. So it should be fairly straightforward. And it's a scale that you probably know quite well. So actually, it should be fairly straightforward. How are we doing then? So what I'm trying to do is make certain types of sounds. And as a blower, I mean, you can try and replicate this if you're playing piano as well, or double bass. But as a blower, what I'm trying to do is try and make certain shapes by articulating in a certain way. So using my tongue in a certain way. So it might be how you use the feel or the touch on the piano, how you're using the bow on the violin. Have we got any violinists? I'd love to think we did.
Who's playing the tenor who also plays violin. So
get your violin out, for goodness sake. For goodness sake, it'll free up everything you're doing, I promise. And what we're trying to do is just get you to play absolutely bang on in time. I'll bet there are some people who are playing and copying the exact notes I'm playing, and they're going, yeah, I've got this, it's fine. Is that you? Is that you? Are you out there? But actually, it's not in time. So we're going to do a bit more. I just want you to think a little bit more about that and about how that works. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. good. The band is starting to gel really nicely, and it's all feeling good, and we're warming up. It's so exciting. Sorry, my excitement's just too much, but it's not. I love it. It's brilliant.
I've started to make mistakes, so all good.
I didn't notice. No, I did. It's all good. The phrases were getting more complicated, though, and we're having fun. I really hope you're having fun. I wish I could see you having fun. It's all good. So this thing about rhythm is so important that actually probably you've been in workshops before where people have talked about playing one-note solos. One-note solos are great because you don't have to think about anything except for the rhythm. And the rhythm, for me, is the important bit. It's the difficult bit. So what we're going to do is now we're going to test out Sam. He's right here. And what we're going to do is we are going to play the B-flat blues, and we're going to ask him to play a one-note solo. And we're going to pick some random notes for him, just to prove that it's not about the note choice, it is about the rhythm. This is something I did once with a coaching session I was doing with a band at the school where I teach, and we had quite an advanced piano player, and he was playing this solo that sounded so cool, actually, to the uninitiated. It sounded really cool. And after a while I just stopped him. I said, "You're just playing anything, aren't you? This sounds like a really complicated scale, but you actually have no idea what you're doing, do you?" And he stopped. And this guy's pretty advanced. He's a sixth former. He does Junior Royal Academy of Music, the jazz course. He's a serious player. He stopped. He said, "No, I'm just playing anything, really. It just seemed like a good lark to mess around." So I made him do this. And after about 5 minutes, he said, "Yeah, that's really hard. That's really hard." So I want you to try this at home as well. So it's a concert B-flat blues. So I think we'll ask Sam to improvise using a B natural. That sounds like a nightmare, doesn't it? I would say.
Thanks, Ed.
But it's not a nightmare, not for someone of this level. So let's have a listen to what he does. And join in on any note after you hear what he's doing. We'll give you a whole chorus, I think. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Lovely, loved it. And actually, I don't know how you felt at home, but that kind of worked. It's cool. Next, we're going to give him a concert E natural in the B-flat blues. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, go. So what we see here is, if there's a number of ways you could look at this. Thanks, Sam. Sounded great. There's a number of ways we could treat this. We could either say, well, if we play what we think is a wrong note, we could just stick with it and just play it for a whole chorus, whole time through the blues, and just see what happens. Or we could actually intentionally do something like that. If one guy is playing a solo next to you, or girl, and they play something very bluesy, and you think, I know, I'm going to play something that completely contrasts with this. Now, let's take it to another step and see what you could do with it. Sam, pick up your trumpet again. So this time, we're going to give him the B natural for 4 bars, but this is where we're going to learn a little bit about tension and release. We're going to then give him the next 4 bars. He's allowed to play anything he wants. So hopefully, for our ears' sake, he will resolve that B natural and do something lovely and bluesy, and it will sound or anything he wants to, because he's using his feelings and his emotions in music, and we'll see where it goes. So he's going to totally crunch for 4 bars, then he's going to stop crunching. Join in if you want, really do. Pick any note, just honk along. Honestly, if you play rhythmically, you'll be amazed how good it sounds. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, go. So hopefully you could hear what was going on there. I hope the bass and piano and the harmony came across well enough so you could hear how he was using that. Now, there are different notes we could actually pick certain notes and say these are particular tensions in the chord. But actually, I think it's nice to just open things up and say, let's try any note and see what happens. if nothing else, it gives you a really good way of getting out of playing what you might have deemed to be a wrong note. But remember, it's all about playing absolutely rhythmically. That is so, so, so important. We always talk about certain notes we can use in certain places. We say we can use this on a dominant seventh, that on a minor scale. I've heard some pretty decent jazz musicians say to me, well, actually, you can play any note you like. It's just about how you play it and then how you resolve it or where you take it next. If all we ever heard Sam do was play the B natural on a B-flat blues, well, I, for one, would love it. But actually, we wouldn't be that happy. We wouldn't be that happy at all. We'd think we wanted him to do something different. Good. Fantastic. So I'm going to move on to something slightly different now. So if you could find, what you should find is a sheet that you've all got, which is all about dominant sevenths. And, well, actually, it's about seventh chords, not just dominant sevenths. You should have that in front of you. I want my version. There it is. So what this gives you is a really good practice tool. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about practice tools. Sorry, Sam, I can see you're looking upset about the odd notes.
No, it's all right. I released my tension. So I was tense for 4 bars, but then I got my 4 bars of release, so I'm all right now.
It was good.
Thanks.
I enjoyed it. It was very good. So what we're going to do is look at this lovely, hopefully my little comedic moment now has given you time to find your 7th chord cycle exercise. This is a really good thing you can use just to practice playing through the 3 main types of chord that we come across in jazz. And again, you might look at it and say, oh, yeah, I know about dominant 7th chords, I know about major chords, I know about minor chords, but do you know all of them? It's a bit like saying about the minor pentatonic. You think you know it, but make sure it's something that you absolutely love and play perfectly. So just as an exercise, you could do this. We're going to look at the middle section. We're just going to look at the dominant sevenths, not the major sevenths or the minor sevenths, because dominant sevenths are used a lot in the blues, as we've just been playing, and they're the most interesting, colourful chord out there, I think. So you could just say, well, I'll do this. This is quite fun. And then I got bored, because that's not actually much fun. Now, it's a really good thing to do, to play it absolutely in time and play it absolutely carefully and make sure that everything is absolutely learned, and that's what you should do to start with. But I'm going to give you a couple of ideas of how you can use this to extend your knowledge of these basic chords. Now, before I do that, I'm actually just going to talk about a practice tool that I think there's at least one person definitely on here who knows me and knows I talk about this, so I apologise straight away for going on about this again. But one of the things I absolutely adore, if that's a good word for this, is using a drum loop app. Let me just take a poll. Do you use a drum loop app in your practice? You can say no.
I do sometimes, yeah.
Do you use the drum loop app in your practice? Does anybody use a drum loop? You probably don't. Metronome, yes. Yep. It's a cool thing, and I'll tell you why. Am I talking too much?
Who are you talking to?
Am I boring them with this?
I'm sure they're really interested.
Okay.
They probably want to find out the ending.
Yeah, I will tell you the ending, but I will get back to playing in a minute, I promise. So basically, everybody says play with a metronome. That is the most important thing. Our drummer here has told us play with a metronome, and he is so right. It's the most important thing. How many of you have been told to practice with a metronome but then not actually done that much metronome practice? There are hands going up in the room. Goodness. I'm one of those people. I didn't put my hand up, but I am one of those people. And something that I've come across with a few people, and I've got to say, I usually get these ideas from listening to other people talking at me. They're not my ideas, but I take them on board, and I say, I'm going to use this, I'm going to tell other people about it. You can find drum apps that will play just little looped bars, just round and round and round. And there's one that's fantastic. I'm not sponsored by these people, but it's called... I get nothing from you downloading it, but it's called Drum Genius. There's like a little green man I don't know why I'm doing that, it doesn't help. He's got a little green face, drum genius. And I think if you pay about £2, you can download most of it. And if you pay £7, you can download all of it. I promise I'm not getting any money from these guys. And it gives you all these different styles, and they're all in the style of different, you could say, I want to practice using the drum pattern that was played on the original version of The Chicken, or the one that was played on this great swing tune by Horace Silver, or so on and so forth. There's funk ones, there's lots of weird time ones, and I find doing that is so much more fun than playing with a metronome, and it makes me actually do something that's useful. So this is maybe your one thing you take away that you go and work with. I'm going to give you an example. This is fantastic. I use it for classical music and I use it for jazz music. Fortunately, I've got a drum machine that's a little bit more human. That's unfair. It's loads more human. The great Gary Evans is in the room, and he is going to be my drum loop machine. So I'm going to show you the kind of thing I do. So I take the dial. I'm going to have to speed you up and slow you down. So basically, I'll say, how do I want to and what I absolutely love doing is playing stuff like this with a funk groove, because it's nice and strong and it's fun. So I like a funk groove, please. Go. And then I'll do this. I'm just enjoying it for the moment. So that kind of thing, and that's quite basic, but it's more fun than doing it with a metronome, and it helps you with a sense of style as well, really. Now, if I say to him, if I say to my drum loop, I'll now play something with a swing. Nice, gentle, medium swing. 1, 2, 3. And I could practice my major scales. How dull. I mean, it's really important. Thank you. So on and so forth. And it's a really fun thing to do. Then when I've done all of that stuff, which is really important, then I just do this. Just the swing again, please. Etc. So, and I'll do stuff like that, and it'll get increasingly more complicated. And over time, I'll do things that actually have some sort of pattern to them, or going back to what I did at the beginning, just playing completely freely as well. It's just such a fun thing to do. Thank you, Gary. That must have been really dull for you, but it works, and it makes us do things. We have to say, do we want to be better players? Yes, we do. How are we going to do that? And we know that we should be practicing with a metronome. So using that drum loop, for me, is just a really good way of doing that. What I'd like to do with you all now is play through those dominant sevenths. So we're going to start at the beginning. So that is concert E flat 7. Or C7 for your alto saxophones, or F7 for your tenor saxophones and trumpets, or E flat 7 if you're playing a concert pitch instrument. And we're just going to play them as crotchets. And this is just a great practice. You thought you were here to have fun. Not only are you here to have fun, but you're also here to improve your technique. So we're going to play with a really big, full sound. Some of you won't be able to play all of them, and those are the ones you need to go and practice. So we're just going to have a go at that. We're going to do, basically, if we play them crotchets, it'd be 2 bars on each. 2 bars on each chord. Couldn't think of the word chord. Join in if you feel you'd like to. They all want to join in because it's just fun to play. So here we go. So instruments at the ready, dominant 7th chords, join in with me as soon as you hear what I'm doing. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Again, and I didn't. I was going to. So I think they were having so much fun with it. That's what the thing was. So basically, again, we can do that with the drum loop or the metronome. It's just a really good technical exercise. Technique feeds our ability to then be free and creative, do whatever we want to do. But also, it's helping us with just our knowledge of keys and words. Because a wise person once said, somebody tell me who said this, you're only as good as your weakest key. Who can tell me who said that? Maybe somebody can write it in on the chat. You're only as good as your weakest key. That's a famous quote. I want someone to literally tell me. Because
We've got 18 people with Google. So
I literally can't remember. You're not allowed to use Google. No Google.
I'm sure there'll be someone commenting in about 2 seconds.
I don't know. It's definitely a famous quote, but they're right.
Ed Leaker, 2021.
No, I wish I could. I'm full of these little sound bites, but they're not mine. That's the trouble. I can't lay claim to them because somebody will Google it and find out it wasn't mine. So yeah, you're only as good as your weakest key. So if you find, I mean, for me, I just hate and have done since I was yay high. I hate A flat major. Or A flat 7 or A flat minor. Anything with A flat in the title. Oh, I just hate it. So I force myself to practice in those kind of keys. And it's nice to practice a scale like we're doing with the drum loop, maybe just playing around, playing the scale or the chord, improvising using that, so on and so forth. But and then hopefully it becomes a bit stronger in your playing. And then when you come across an A flat, or when I come across an A flat, it becomes something that I just deal with, and it's another sound and colour that I use. So you're all thinking, where's this going? Let's stick with that dominant 7th idea. Here's something that's quite fun. If we take the dominant 7th, and now we say, well, we've done the basic thing, which gives us good technique. Good technique is good. All jazz musicians have good technique. Oh, that's not true. All good jazz musicians have good technique. That's true. So that's where we start. We need to be able to play our instrument. So we've done the straight bit. We can play it with a classical tone and all of that. What fun. I promise not to sing again. But then what happens if we take it forward and we put some rhythms with it? We can make up our own rhythms, but what I'm going to do is we're just going to stick to one dominant 7th. And because we've been working on a B-flat blues, it's going to be B-flat 7 concert. G7, so the final one on the list there, if you're playing an alto saxophone. C7, so the first one on there, if you're going to be playing a trumpet or a clarinet or a tenor saxophone, or B-flat 7. Got myself in a muddle then. Or B-flat 7, which is somewhere in the middle. The third one along, if you're playing a concert pitch instrument. And we're just going to stick with that one dominant 7th. Let's play it through together to make sure we know how to play that one chord. Just crotchets. 3. So I'm going to show you some ideas that you could do yourself, things that could work quite well, just working on each one of these chords. We'll get the band to play with us, but we can do it with the drum loop, we can do it on our own with nothing. We're used to doing that a lot at the moment. So I'm going to play a 2-bar phrase, and then you play the exact thing back at me. But all I'm going to do is just use those notes in that chord. And then I'm going to play another 2-bar phrase, and you play it back at me. And another 2-bar phrase, and you play it back at me. And so on and so forth. And it'll be lots of fun. So, just B-flat 7. We're not going to do any other chords, just round and round B-flat 7. 1, 2, lovely. Thanks, guys. Thanks. Very, very nice indeed. So hopefully you managed to join in and copy the things that I was playing, and hopefully you managed to be able to do a couple of things, and maybe if you couldn't play exactly what I was playing, you could do something slightly different, mess it around a little bit, do your own thing. But hopefully every time you did that, you could hear what I was doing and what Sam was doing when he was copying me. He was trying to use exactly the same type of articulation. I don't think he was trying to use my articulation. I think what he was trying to do was just play really rhythmically, because he's a good player and that's what he does. So that's basically what happened. Am I right? Yes.
Well, I was trying to copy as well, though, because it's one of the things about learning to listen, which is something we can do a lot in lockdown, is listening to records of really good jazz players. So when we're listening, if we can copy every single thing down to the exact detail, it makes us better players. So I was trying and failing, because I did make a few mistakes, but I was doing my best. And it doesn't matter if you make mistakes. I mean, Ed plays it perfectly because he created it, and he's really good. But he also created that piece of music. So he creates it, and I'm desperately trying to copy it. And it doesn't matter if you get it slightly wrong, because then you can go back and copy it again and get it right. And that's what we do when we're transcribing, basically. Absolutely,
absolutely it. And actually, the T word, thank you, Sam, because I haven't mentioned the T word, which is quite important, is this is transcribing. When we played earlier with the blues and I played a phrase and you copied back, that was transcribing. And now you're also transcribing. You're not transcribing the notes, because you know we're going to play that particular chord, the B-flat 7 blues chord. But what you are transcribing is the rhythm. And as I said before, the rhythm really makes the style, I think. If you don't have a good rhythmic sense, then you don't play particularly in a stylish way. And the other thing that you will notice is that if you're playing a blowing instrument, that you really have to articulate properly. That's absolutely key. If you can't tongue, and don't worry if you can't tongue properly, there are so many people who can't tongue properly. For years I couldn't tongue properly. And then I suddenly worked out if I was actually going to sound any good at all, I'd have to learn how to do it. And I find people all the time who have taken grade 8 saxophone and grade 8 clarinet, and I'm sure the same goes for brass instruments and all other instruments, that we find people who can't actually articulate properly, they can't use their tongue properly. It's never too late to sort that out. It's just really, really important. Hope I've gone on about that enough. I hope that I'm not boring people with the level of kind of technique chat, but it's something that I think is really important and fundamental in trying to make us play in a really good style. So, as I say, hopefully you'll take something from that, even if it's just that you're going to go and maybe play the stuff that your teacher set you, and you think, well, okay, I won't do what he said, so I didn't like him, but I will actually do the stuff my teacher set me, because I think probably it's worthwhile based on what he was saying. So even that would be a complete and utter win for me. Good. So what I want to do next, and this is going to get slightly more complicated, I'm going to do a similar type of thing, but we're going to go around that dominant sevenths cycle, and this is around the cycle of fifths or cycle of fourths, depending on how you call it. I think often Americans like to call it the circle of fourths, or Europeans call it the cycle of fifths. Sam's shaking his head.
I'm not sure.
Is it because I'm wrong, or because you don't know?
It's because I don't know, and I'm hoping you're going to tell me.
I'm sure that's the case. I'm sure it's the case, but I don't know. Different people call it different things, but it is that famous clock face circle that we learn when we're doing grade 5 theory, and it's so important in terms of how one chord leads to another, a dominant leads to a dominant, leads to a dominant, leads to a dominant. So we're going to use that cycle. It helps us train our ears, helps train our technique, and I'm now going to do some things for you to transcribe. So instead of just doing B-flat 7 concert, we're going to start on E-flat 7 concert. So that's C7 if you're playing an alto saxophone, an F7 if you're playing a trumpet or a clarinet. I live in fear of saying this incorrectly. I've said all that correctly, haven't I?
No,
yeah, good. I hate to sound stupid and sort of get that bit wrong, but that's absolutely right. So we're starting at the beginning of the dominant sevenths. So our lovely band are going to play 4 bars of each chord for us, please. And I will play you a 2-bar phrase, which you will then repeat, and then we move on to the next one. So we're really going to have our wits about us. If you want to just find the harder ones you can't play, you want to do a little bit of improvisation in your 2 bars, or if you just want to try and play it and completely fail, but it doesn't matter because you've tried, that's also fine. Okay, so this is the dominant sevenths cycle. 1, 2, fantastic. Thank you, Sam. Fantastic. Thank you, band. You're amazing. Doing exactly what I ask. Goodness, I wish I had more people like this who just do exactly what I ask. It's brilliant. I love it. So, great. I hope you all got on okay with that. That's quite hard going around the whole cycle. I'm sure there's some people who just say, great, got it. But even then, I want you to sort of search deep within yourselves and say, did you really get it? Was there something you could have improved about it? Because if you haven't realised already, the way that I kind of do these things when I'm left to my own devices to decide how I'm going to do them is to kind of say, I'm going to start with the foundations. And if the foundations are not there, what happens when the foundations are not there? The house falls down. And hopefully the house won't fall down for you. So you've got to put those foundations in place. Really, if you're going to play jazz to any kind of decent level, just knowing your 12 major scales and being able to play all the 12 dominant sevenths, the 12 major sevenths, the 12 minor sevenths, and their associated scales, which are things you've heard before, I'm sure. The Dorian mode, major scale with a flat third and a flat seventh to fit with the minor, the major scale to fit with the major seventh chord, and the Mixolydian, which is a major with a flat seven, to fit with the dominant seventh. Sorry, I've said that all very fast. I'm assuming this is the kind of thing you've done before, but what I'm hopefully coming up with for you are new ways of practicing it. Because when we have new ways of practicing things, we actually do practice them and we actually do get better, rather than falling into what I would call our safe zone. I'm always in my safe zone. I always fall in there and start playing things I know. And in my practice, I'm just trying to do more interesting things than that and build those new and interesting things of practice. Is now a good time to take some questions, I wonder? I wonder if we've had any questions. I wonder if anyone's got with the answer. What was the question I asked earlier? Who's heard that famous quote that I've forgotten already? You're only as good as your worst key. Anybody know what the answer to that was, I wonder?
Answers on a postcard then.
It's definitely out. It's someone really obvious. I mean, I wouldn't want to go out on a limb and say it was just like Charlie Parker, but it's someone like, as obvious as that, I think. But you can't imagine, knowing what you know about him, that he would have said that.
Can I make a suggestion? Is that all right?
You can make any suggestion, Sam.
Could I suggest that we play Sesame Strut again, and that you do a solo, and while Ed's doing a solo, you can all think of a question, and then you can solo after Ed's done his solo. And would that be okay? So if we play the arrangement as it
Absolutely.
is, but if just Ed does a solo, and during that solo is your time to think of a question.
Are we going to leave some solo space for the folks?
And then we're going to leave the solo space after you, if that's okay. And then we'll go back and play the head. Is that all right?
Absolutely fantastic. Yep. I can't think of a better way to do things. That's absolutely fantastic. Good. Think of some really intelligent questions. I know you're scared to ask them, but just ask them anyway, and then hopefully we'll be able to answer them. You never know. Okay. 1, 2, 2, 3.
everybody.
Fantastic. Rapturous applause. I can hear it in my head. It's all out there. It's all out there. I'd just like to say a massive thank you to this incredible band of people. These people are absolutely fantastic to play with, and it's just amazing also in this horrible lockdown situation just to come out and see people and play with them. So thank you for that, folks. Really, really fantastic. From the heart, I mean it. So do we have any questions? There aren't any.
I've got one from Rowan.
Ooh.
So Rowan would like to know, does Ed play any other instruments? That's the first two questions. So do you play any other instruments other than alto and soprano saxophone?
I play the clarinet, and I play the flute really badly.
Do you play any other saxophones other than the ones you have there?
I play the tenor saxophone and the baritone saxophone.
There we go.
Yes, and I also like playing the bass clarinet a little bit. And I used to play the drums when I was young. Yes! Yeah. That's why I like playing with drum loops,
there
perhaps.
We are, Rowan. And how old were you when you started playing?
Great question. Are you making these up?
No. They're from Rowan.
Okay, sorry, Rowan. I didn't mean that. Good questions.
She's very good at questions.
So, how old was I? 9, I think. So I should be better by now, really. 9 years old is when I started. I remember it's all I ever wanted to play was the saxophone. I've got a toy plastic saxophone. I know many musicians will say they had their toy instruments, and I was one of those. I had my toy saxophone. And as soon as I was big enough to hold it, my parents went down to John Packer's in Taunton when they were in Taunton at the old shop, and they picked me up an alto saxophone. It was amazing. And my grandparents were really upset because they said my parents shouldn't have got it because it was too big for me and I was going to hurt myself. They were wrong. Oh.
Underwater space force.
Ooh.
What was the first instrument you ever played?
Alto saxophone. Yeah. So that kind of answers the question, which is unusual because a lot of people start off on clarinet and then switch to saxophone, and I did it the other way. I find that was quite hard, and I'm told by a lot of people that that's the harder way to do it because the saxophone, I was about to say, is an easier instrument. It's just a different instrument. It's harder to start on, definitely, but the clarinet, moving on to the clarinet was quite tricky. Covering all those holes, my goodness. But I got there in the end. Well, I suppose I haven't chosen it over other styles. I play lots of different styles. It's a strange one, really, because I started off just like many people do, and I was just playing grade music. I started off with my local music service teacher, just learning grade music, and I didn't know much about jazz or pop or anything, and I played some Kenny G solos at home, which Jade will appreciate that. I played some Kenny G solos, which I thought were great, and I still think they're great. About to lose all my credibility with any musician stood behind me or to the side of me. And after that, I played some classical music, and I sort of got into the classical saxophone. I suppose that's why I'm really into technique. One of my favourite players of all time is Branford Marsalis. I suppose I like to think that I try and be as much like him as I can sometimes, because I know that he practices classical music, and he plays classical music to a really high level, and he plays jazz music to an incredibly high level. And I think that jazz musicians, more than any other musicians, should be open. I won't say they are always, but they should be open to all styles of music. And if you look at my playlist of what I listen to, it includes all sorts of things.
Really technical saxophone question.
Oh, I hope I can answer it.
Whenever I try certain altissimo notes on my alto, I always end up either hitting a high note, a note higher than it, or just below it. Any tips?
Right, so altissimo notes. We're on to straight up to the exciting and advanced stuff. Okay, so basically the key to your altissimo notes lies in your low notes. You may or may not have realised this, because a lot of what we do when we're playing altissimo notes is that we are controlling what happens with our throat. A lot of players don't talk about that, or they don't even realise it's happening. For some people, they play very naturally with a very relaxed throat position, and others don't. And it's one of those things a little bit, I'm sorry to be so sort of long-winded about answering this, but it's one of those things a little bit like scales and dominant sevenths, major scales. It's all of those simple things. I tend to set people projects to learn these things, and they say, yeah, I'm doing that, but they're actually not. So if you want to really master altissimo notes, the first thing to do is to really get to grips with the overtones on the bottom of the saxophone. Hopefully you know what I mean by the overtones on the bottom of the saxophone. So hopefully I can do this when it's so cold, but we'll see. So if you play a low B, and then you use the low B, a B flat, and then I'm going to try and play the low B flat. Sorry if you're not a saxophone player. Then I'm going to try and play the same. I'm going to play the second B flat. I'll just do it, and you'll hear what I mean. So what I'm doing is, we could call that a false fingering, but actually what I'm doing is I'm playing the B flat, so just the easy one, and then I'm playing the same note using the low B flat fingering. Then I'm playing the F above that, and then I'm playing the same note using the low B flat fingering. This is a very quick way of explaining this, and you can do that on all the low notes. And you can work through them. And what we should really do, same way we're working on the dominant sevenths, is spend ages just holding long notes like that, and really develop a kind of relaxed feeling in your throat, and memorize what the position is in your throat as you're doing those different kinds of things. That's a really, really, really fast way of talking about something. If you're really into this stuff and you're quite advanced, check out a book by Sigurd Rascher. He's a classical saxophone player, but all the jazzers use this book. It's called Top Tones for Saxophone. Brilliant book. Brilliant book, yes? Yes. Do you have any other favourite? We've got a fabulous reed player here as well. Do you have any favourite books or exercises that you use for that?
Mainly just that book, to be fair. And there's the Ted Nash one. I think it's Ted Nash, it's blue. That one's very good. And that's got some nursery rhymes in it, I think. Can you play it?
Yeah. So basically just try and do it as often as possible, is my advice. But practicing those exercises will definitely help. Any more questions? Go on. Favourite scale? Goodness. I don't know. That's really hard. That's the hardest question I've had, I think. I really do. I think that's the hardest. I don't have a favourite scale. I like all scales. I really do like scale-it practice, because I find it does help set up a technique. But I'm just going to share one sort of final thing about scales. And this is something, again, that I heard from another player, actually. It's something I heard from a very famous, fantastic player who lives in the UK, Julian Arguez, who some of you might have heard of. And something he talked about was the idea of practicing scales as like pools of notes. So imagine you're an artist, and you don't have the colours in a particular order, or you don't have like a perfect round pool of red and perfect round pool of green and things like that. It's just think of C major not as starting on C. Think of it after you've done your first bit of practice. Think of it as just a pool of notes. So we could practice, C major could be this. Yeah, that's C major, and it's much more interesting than just going, I think. But the reality of it is, we should practice it both ways. That didn't answer the question. I love all scales.
We've got one more question from Underwater Spaceball.
Yes.
Who's your favourite band or artist?
Oh, that's another hard one, isn't it? That's another really, really difficult thing to really. I just listen to so many different things. It's a good question because I always ask whoever I'm with, I ask them what they're listening to try and learn about something new. I love the fact some of you may even know who I'm talking about here, but I for my sins went onto Facebook earlier and one of my friends had posted a Spotify playlist of what they'd been listening to, and it was brilliant. I just spent the next couple of hours. I was working, but it was on in the background. Listening to things I'd never heard before, and it was fantastic. I couldn't even tell you what half of it was, but it was really, really, really good. What I try to do is have 2 or 3 saxophone players that I listen to exclusively, just over and over again, and I rotate them and change them. One of them will always be Branford Marsalis, who I've mentioned already. He's absolutely fantastic. I'm listening a lot at the moment to a chap called Bob Reynolds. I know Bob Reynolds is someone that Jade listens to. He's a young guy from the States, lives in LA, and plays a lot of music that has got quite a good common appeal, I think, with the general public, while still having quite a lot of interesting elements to it. So he sort of keeps the musicians interested, and he keeps people who might not be musicians interested. I love what he does. Worth checking out, definitely.
Brilliant.
Fantastic.
Well, thank you. Can I make a suggestion again?
Please do.
Can I suggest that you be thinking, should we play through Yes, No, Maybe? So people at home can either listen, because Yes, No, Maybe is quite tricky. It's not sight readable for me. I had to practice it. So if you haven't had a chance to practice it, or you would like to just have a listen to us play, it'll only be about 5 minutes. So if you'd like to have a listen, that would be great. We'll all do some solos and things. And I'd like Ed to be thinking about which was the best question. Oh. And then Ed can judge. After this, we'll tell you who the best question was, and then we'll wrap things up for today. So join in if you like. You could even just, while we're playing, you could even practice improvising over us. Like Ed was saying, it's quite nice to do that with records. If you put on your favorite, it doesn't have to be jazz, but just, practice playing along with people at this time when we're not able to do it, who are recorded. That's a really good thing to do. So
I'll just say very, very briefly, because I know we're running out of time, but if you just, whilst you're looking at this, you'll see that it's got an arrangement to it. It's got a solo section and then an ensemble section as well. So what's quite interesting about this is it sort of showcases something called a 1-6-2-5. So if we've been used to working with a 2-5-1 chord sequence, this really does use the 1-6-2-5 a lot in it in various places. So watch out for that. And it's slightly awkward in that it starts on the second bar of the form, and it's slightly awkward in that it's sort of in 2, not in 4. So this is called Yes, No, Maybe. Can't remember how it goes. Oh, I know. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Where's that? Yes. Hello. Right. Thank you very much, everybody. We really enjoyed that. I hope you enjoyed listening or joining in. For those of you, hopefully Ed will allow us to keep that tune for us to work on in future, so we can practice it and work on it in future workshops, which would be really nice if Ed would allow that.
Absolutely. Yep.
So we're pretty much wrapping up. I'd just like to see if Ed would have a decision on what he thought the best question was.
Well, I think it's got to be, because it's, again, those who know me, it's something I always go on about. It's the person who asked about my favourite artist or player. I think that it's always checking out what people are listening to, because you can learn about new things. You know, I talked about Bradford Marsalis and Bob Reynolds, and you might have heard of them and you might not. So that's you've definitely learned something there, in one way or another, I hope.
So the favourite, was that Sabina? Underwater Space Wolf. Well, once we find out who Underwater Space Wolf is, we will make sure that you get one of Ed's CDs.
I hope CDs work underwater.
Oh yes, well, and hopefully wolves can appreciate them as well,
Yeah.
And particularly space wolves.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's, perhaps you've been awarded the best question, so you will get a CD coming your way once we know who you are. All that remains is for me to say big thank you to everyone for coming today virtually. We're hoping to have another one of these before Easter, so please. I'll be sending out an email. Please give us your feedback. It really does help, so that we know how to make these better for you. Do you like them? Do you want them to carry on even once we're released from our lockdown peril? We think it works, and we think we will probably carry on live streaming even when we're able to have children back in a room together. But please do give us your feedback. It really helps us to know what to do for you, really. So a big thank you. I'm going to introduce the band now. Big thank you, firstly, to Ed, who's given us a fantastic workshop.
Thank you for having me.
A big thank you to Jade, also on the tenor saxophone. A huge thank you to Gary on the drums. A huge thank you to Jim on the bass. And a big thank you to Martin on the keyboard. And yes, so we'll be in touch. We're hoping to do another workshop in about a month's time. So please stay tuned for that. And unless there's any questions or any further feedback, I think we'll probably sign off there, Lewis. Is that? Excellent. Well, we'll read them all, and thank you very much. And we'll see you at the next one if you really liked it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.